Thanks, Wolf. I want to go to a special exclusive interview we have right now. This afternoon, retiring Republican Congressman Paul Mitchell of Michigan sent a letter to the chair of the Republican National Committee, fellow Michigander Ronna McDaniel, as well as to the House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy, telling them that he is asking the clerk of the House to change his party identification from Republican to independent. Congressman Mitchell has also said that he will be withdrawing from his engagement and association with the Republican Party at the national and state level, though he will still endorse and help candidates with whom he shares principles. Joining us now is Congressman Mitchell of Michigan. Congressman, thank you so much for joining us. You have clearly been disgusted, based on your Twitter feed for weeks, with the unfounded voter fraud claims and conspiracy theories being pushed by the president. Was the final straw last week when a majority of your colleagues, House Republicans, signed on to that baseless Texas lawsuit that would have disenfranchised all of the voters of your home state of Michigan, as well as Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and Georgia?
Well, Jake, I believe that any candidate has the ability to request a recount, to go through legal processes if they think there's some basis that the vote's not reasonable or some founded conspiracy concerns or concern about fraud. But we've gone through the process. And as I saw that amicus brief, as well as the discussions over the weekend in the national media, it became clear to me that I could no longer be associated with the Republican Party, that leadership does not stand up and say, the process, the election is over. It's over today. And then I saw the president tweet out that it's not over till January 20. Somehow he's going to continue to combat this. The people have voted. As I say in my letter, I voted for Donald Trump. I supported the administration policies 95, 96% of the time the last two terms. I've been active in the national state party. But this party has to stand up for democracy first, for our Constitution first, and not political considerations, not protect a candidate, not simply for raw political power. And that's what I feel is going on, and I've had enough.
And for people who don't know, as you note, you've been with President Trump 95, 96% of the time. You voted for him in 2016, 2020. You're a member of the Conservative Republican Study Group in the House. You whipped votes for Republicans in Congress. You raised money for Republican candidates. And now you're going to be an independent because your letter, as I noticed, it CCs the clerk of the House.
Yes.
Tell us what it feels like in this moment. And how are you going to respond to critics who attack you as, they're going to call you a rhino, even though obviously you're a very conservative Republican.
Well, the definition of rhino has changed in the last couple of years, hasn't it, Jake? Rhino now is if you don't follow whatever the president decides is the theme of the day or the week or the month. I'm a conservative. I'm a fiscal conservative. I believe in small government. How am I going to respond? Frankly, I'm not. I'm going to stand on my principles. And yes, I will take abuse from both the far left and the far right. In my opinion, the extremes of both parties are dragging their parties and this country off a cliff. The majority of Americans are in the middle. The majority of Americans want solutions to problems, want us to address them and not see who can have a political win, not see who can grab political power for all it's worth and actually do something to solve a problem for the American people. And frankly, we haven't done enough of that. We haven't done enough the last two terms. And this election simply confirms for me that it's all about power first. And that, frankly, is disgusting and demoralizing.
The Texas lawsuit is it's nuts. Anybody who reads it understands that it's not based in fact. It's not based in evidence. It's just based in ignorance and conspiracy theories. 126 of your colleagues, House Republicans, signed their names onto it. And I'm wondering, do you think they actually believe this insanity? Or is there some other reason why a majority of House Republicans actually support disenfranchising Americans in 4 states for nothing other than, as you put it, a power grab?
Well, one of them is my state, as you know, Michigan. And I've not spoken with hardly any of them. I've spoken with one other member who believes there are concerns with some states or others have done. But I didn't believe the brief was appropriate or valid. I believe the lawsuit, I'm trying to think of a polite term for it.
You don't have to be polite.
It was ridiculous. What it says is if Texas thinks that other states have administered their election laws in a manner they don't like, that they can overturn those votes, that they can overturn those states. We're a republic of states. States have the ability to determine their election laws. And in fact, in the concern about Michigan, a federal judge ruled that the Secretary of State could send out absentee ballot applications. They did not send out ballots. They sent out applications to everyone if they wanted to get a ballot given the COVID-19. There's nothing in the law that precludes that. However, apparently Texas didn't like it. Okay. I wasn't aware that we had to respond to Texas whenever we had an election in Michigan or in the other state. So I just think it's one more desperate attempt. You'll note that they chose those states, whereas Montana and other states did similar things to what Michigan and others did, but in North Carolina did. I think North Carolina allowed 8 or 9 days late ballots, and they counted. They didn't challenge North Carolina, but they did challenge Michigan and other states. It's just blatantly an effort to say, we will do anything we can to overturn the election that we lost. And I say in my letter, I've told you, Jake, anybody that gets into politics has to be willing to accept winning and losing with some level of grace and maturity. I've done both. Losing is brutal. It's personal. It hurts. But if you're not willing to accept that, you should not be in political leadership. You should not be. This country needs it desperately. And unfortunately, we haven't seen it demonstrated as much as we should.
We've seen these local election officials, including the Speaker of the State House in Michigan today, putting out a letter saying that if he were to challenge the electors going to Joe Biden, that would set a horrible precedent and it would wreak havoc. We saw a guy on your canvassing board, Aaron Van Langeveld, I believe is his name, showing more courage and character than House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy and House Minority Whip Steve Scalise combined. Why? They don't actually believe this crackpot stuff, do they? It's just they're afraid of Donald Trump?
I haven't spoken with them, so I can't tell you what rationale that they have for supporting this other than trying to support the president. I can tell you that I appreciated Speaker Chatfield, the State House Speaker, speaking up today. And he did so in response to a state legislator that, when asked about, they had some plans in Lansing for continuing protests, they were asked, well, people could feel safe, correct? He said, well, he couldn't guarantee that. We had a state House member talk about the fact that violence may occur today. In fact, we had a credible threats of violence as determined by the Michigan State Police against electors. They had to secure it and shut down all the state office buildings around there. When you can't conduct an election without threats of violence, we become a third world nation. What are we, Venezuela? I mean, it's ridiculous. And to have a elected official, in this case a state house member, say, well, he wasn't really sure if there'd be violence or not, you ought to stand up and say there should be no violence. We do not hold elections in which there's violence. This country's come too far. And that's why I'm troubled, and that's why I ultimately decided to leave the party, because our leadership needs to stand up and say, no, we have a process, we respect it, and we respect the vote of the American people. And when they have voted, we move on to govern the nation and not play politics.
What is the future of the Republican Party, do you think? Because we see all these House Republicans siding with these crazy theories. There are now adherents to QAnon who are in the House of Representatives, in the Republican Party. Obviously, these are not the values that you stand for. We should just note again, for people who don't know, you criticized President Trump for his response to Charlottesville. You criticized President Trump when he launched that racist attack against the 4 congresswomen of color, the Democratic women, 3 of whom were born in the U.S., 1 was a naturalized citizen. And when he told them to go back where they came from, you called that out. But again, you're a conservative Republican, like in your heart, and you're a conservative. If there's not a place for you in the Republican Party, where are people like you supposed to go?
I'm not sure what I do next, but let me make a comment about the send them back, because it still enrages me. And my youngest son, Jake, we adopted him from Russia 8 years ago. And anybody that would tell me he's not a citizen, he doesn't have the same rights that you or I have, I have to tell you, I'd knock them on their ass. That's not what our nation stands for. So I'm going to work with candidates that reflect principles that I think our country should stand for. Those that respect other people, be they immigrants, new citizens, born here or not.